Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about a new election process in Duchesne County, and for the people listening on the radio out in KVEL, or people listening in the Carbon County area, this is a really relevant topic. The county has gone to an entire mail-in ballot system. So to discuss the issue, we're joined by Thomas Winterton, who is the Republican Party Central Committee member for Duchesne County. Joanne Evans, who's the Chief Deputy Clerk of Duchesne County and has kind of spearheaded this whole election conversion. And we have Ron Winterton, a Duchesne County Commissioner. So, folks, thanks for joining us for this conversation. Now, so far we've kind of covered the highlights, but let's look down the road at the long-term impacts of this. And you know, what does this change mean down the road as far as participation in elections, cost to the county, things of that nature. And Tom, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's interesting when we watch the news, and it seems like every presidential general election, they're talking about the weather. Oh, if the weather's good, then we're going to be able to get the elderly out, and it's going to affect the voter outcome. If the weather's bad, then this candidate's got a better chance. I think it's funny we're in the 21st century, and the weather's still dictating who are the winner of a race is going to be. And this vote by mail, you have several weeks to get it in. The mail service runs, last I knew, whether it rains or snows or hails, and so it helps with that aspect. November can be very ugly on the weather scene, especially out in Duchesne County. Some of the precincts that we have. Now,
Joanne, during the break, you mentioned something about a poll crisis you had once.
We had a precinct that after all the voters had left, and we had very few voters turn out for that particular election at that polling location, but we had to get them plowed out. They were snowed in, they couldn't leave, and they were there for 5 or 6 hours after the election was over, trying to get out, and they happened to be in a fire station where it wasn't the warmest, and so this will eliminate that, the need to be snowed in, or the not need.
When you think fire station, you think fire, and that's the last place you think would be really cold. But
the reason why we had polling locations in most of our fire stations was because they're ADA accessible. As soon as you lift open one of those fire station doors, the wheelchair can get through.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So from a candidate's point of view, what kind of impacts does this have for you?
Well, it makes you get out and do a lot of one-on-one, and you're going to do it earlier. You're not going to wait until the last day or the day before and either pull a last punch or pull something that is distasteful. It makes you as a candidate be yourself from day one, realizing that they could be voting at any time. Right now we are going through that process. The ballots are out. If they wait until the last day, and they can wait to vote the last day, but candidates need to be up front right from the get-go. And so I think it just brings a more quality to the election process. It's not, the deadline is here and we have them up until this day. The deadline actually starts the day that we mail the ballots out. And so you're on your best behavior and wanting to do what's right for the voters themselves.
You have to make the honeymoon last longer?
A long time.
Well,
yes.
One of the reasons why we chose to go by mail was because we have a lot of oil field workers. They work from 4 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, and they don't have time to come in and do that. And this is one way to accommodate that. And a lot of our workers in Duchesne County is oil field service. And then we have those elderly who can't leave their home after dark or because they don't drive or for whatever reasons. And then you have the working community of the younger generation, and we're just trying to give them an easier convenience.
That's an area that really very possibly could be of concern. What do you do if you've got multiple voters in one house, and you say you have an elderly mother and you've got kids taking care of them? What's to say that the kids don't fill out her ballot for her, and actually they take 2 votes instead of
Well,
instead of 1
voters
vote.
do need to take some responsibility. They need to be aware of what's happening in their home. However, if you have an elderly person who doesn't have the mental capability to vote, they should not vote. They should not have their children fill that out and send it in. And they should consider being taken off the rolls. Although that's a difficult decision to make as a family to do that. But if they don't have the mental capacity and they don't understand what the election's about, then it's not helping the process in an honest and forthright manner.
Okay, and you know what? Well, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was going to say, and to that, their son or daughter may vote for him. They've still got to sign the affidavit on the back, or else their son or daughter is committing not only fraud, which is also mail fraud because it's going through, which is a federal offense. They're also committing forgery, you know, and I guess if they're going to do that, there's a lot more problems than just the mail, you know,
The ballots being in
the ballot being spoiled on that.
Well, I think it actually is indicative of a broader problem of us taking responsibility, not to take advantage of a situation, but to be good players in the community. And this, you know, this always concerns me, whether it be elections or anything else, that we've lost that sense of being a team player in the community and doing things right and doing it fairly and doing it honestly, and to protect the rights of all instead of the advantage of me individually. And I mean, that does seem to be lost. Maybe not so much in a rural county as it is in a larger
Well, one
county.
thing that has always, in my own personal life as well as at work, integrity means a lot to our office and to me personally. And that's what the election process is all about, is the integrity of the election, the integrity of voting for someone who needs to be in office for the people. You know, and so that's the thing that we need to keep in mind, is that we need to have an election process that has integrity. And we believe that this by-mail process will have that, you know.
Now, this solves a lot of problems for Duchesne County, which is, you know, it's not the smallest county, but it's by no means is it the largest county either. How is this going to translate to the Wasatch Front? I mean, would this translate to a Weber, a Davis, a Salt Lake, a Utah county?
Yes, we have heard from several other counties. One of them will put this process in effect for the general election. And so they'll be joining us. They'll be the second one. There's other counties who are interested in it. But it's a process. You have to go to the people. You have to talk to your commissioners. You have to talk to the people around you. And it's a process that they are working on. There are several of the larger counties who are not interested in doing it. But you know, for us as Duchesne County, we're out to help the people of Duchesne County, the voters of Duchesne County. We're not out to make it convenient.
I was going to say, you know, this mail-in voting is being looked at as a tool by the parties. The Democrats have been very effective at going around and increasing their vote by mail because statistics have shown that your voters are 2 to 3 times more likely to vote by mail than they are to go to the poll. And so Democrats and Republicans alike have looked at this and said, well, if we can increase our vote by mail, we can increase our chances of winning an election. And you know, Chairman Thomas Wright, the state Republican chairman, he actually had an editorial in the Salt Lake Tribune in January talking about different races in Salt Lake County where they were able to increase the voter turnout enough to swing the election to the Republican. These are seats that have been held by Democrats for a long time. So you're seeing the parties look at this and say, hey, you know, this is a very effective tool. Let's put it to use, and that's why you see us excited about it. Is we see it as an opportunity to increase our turnout.
Of course.
Well, and to increase upon, sorry.
No, that's all right.
To increase upon that, our Constitution Party chair is Bryce Hamilton, and just going to this service has upped the Constitution Party's members so that they can have help doing the same thing that Thomas talked about.
Well, so I think the real key, though, is because if the Republicans see this about increasing participation, and the Democrats, you know, if you guys are getting it at 25%, you're getting it at 50%, I'm not sure it's going to change things that much as far as turnout goes if both parties are working at it. But what I think it does do is it makes a better collective decision.
Exactly.
Because more people participating, that means you have more people vested in governance, and particularly at local levels. I think that's better.
Yeah, it's important that they're involved. I mean, as a commissioner, I want input from the people I represent. I don't want to make a decision and not have their input. It makes my job a whole lot easier if I know the pros and cons, or there's a lot of people in favor of this, or you know, for us to just be there ruling and making all these laws. I don't like that because there's a lot of fallout from that. But if I know that I have their support, that the majority of the people want this, then I can do it with a good conscience that we made good decisions.
Joanne, you mentioned during the break that actually, while this has now become news because of Duchesne County, the state's already been vested in the possibility of transitioning to a statewide election.
Yes.
So how does that work?
There was a legislative bill passed this last session that by 2015, the whole state of Utah could be by mail. It's contingent upon the things that they find for those of us who are participating in this. They just need to glean information and to find out what structural things need to change, what deadlines need to change, things like that. But the state is looking to go there by 2015.
Yeah, we recently, there's just this last week, a recall election in the state of Wisconsin. Spent $73 million redeciding whether they should have the same governor or not. And so it was a repeat of an election, what, 2 years ago?
2010.
So my question is, if that $73 million price tag, how much of it do you think you could actually cut off, and what kind of cost savings would an all mail-in ballot system have? I mean, do you think that there is a pencilable savings as far as the actual cost of administering elections?
Yes, there will be. We have the voting machines right now. We haven't sold them. They're good machines in that, but if we stay this way, there will be no need to have them, and they're very costly. You have to maintain them. They need to be in a warm spot. They need to be, you know, calculated, and the batteries and all that. So the maintenance goes on whether we have election or not, and this is for the entire, you know, time in between election cycles.
It just seems that just recently we went to the electronic voting machine, so there was a big expense there too, right?
Very costly.
Well, these machines at any given time only have a life of 8 to 10 years. We are reaching the 8-year mark.
They need to be on a better diet.
That's true. We're reaching the 8-year mark, and so I mean, it's just like anything else. You know, you buy a computer, you walk out the door, it's obsolete. Same with the car, type of thing. It's that type of a scenario. However, these do last a little longer.
So when you get the mail-in ballots, and you talked about the process, you're going to separate the envelopes, make sure that nobody knows who voted for what, but you've verified everything. How do you process those ballots?
Well, we're going to stick them in a ballot press to flatten them out so that they'll go through our machine to read the ballot. We test those machines a long time in advance. In fact, we are in the process of testing those machines in the next few days to make sure that they
certify those tests, make them public,
yes.
on such an...
We actually run a test for the public, so anybody can come and watch us process that. We run blank ballots through, fully marked ballots through, partial ballots marked through, so that we know that they can read any scenario.
Okay, so my next question is, do you need a number 2 pencil to fill the little...
No, you need black ink or blue ink, though.
It's kind of like a scan machine, and you feed them through, and then it calculates the results.
And it prints a paper trail so that if we had to go back and look, we can count them one at a time.
When I ran for election for office, I was very curious about the process, and so the night of the election we went over and watched this process to see that there was no funny business, and yet we didn't understand it. And this process is very safe. You can go back if you think there's problems, and that gives you results. And then at the end, as a commission, we go through and canvass it and certify the election results. So,
And that's for any ballots that come in after election day that has been postmarked before election day, and for those overseas ballots that take a long time returning.
yeah, that process has always gone on with the absentee or mail-in. So it's not a new process. We didn't invent that. We're just going to enhance it and follow that clear through our elections.
So let's go back to the whole thing about statewide participation. Do you think that it's actually going to bring attention to some of the offices who are going to get better election results that aren't the high-profile offices? I mean, it's the county recorder, county clerk.
I do.
The state auditor, you know, these are guys that don't usually tend to get a whole lot of attention.
No.
I do think it's going to bring more participation to that. I think that people will pay better attention. Like Thomas said earlier, they have the ability to search out these people and find out what's their agenda and to see if they are willing to vote for them. You know, and I think that in and of itself is going to increase that and become a better thing.
You see people, politicians, if you want to call them that have been in office for years and years and years. And a lot of times it's because nobody knows the opposer, the opposition. And so they just, that's a familiar name, we just keep them in there. But if you can sit at home, do the research and say, well, this guy has been here for 30 years, maybe it is time to change, or we need, you know, he's still doing it with a pencil, and we do have computers out now. We have the technology right at our fingertips. We maybe need to come up to the 20th century.
That's one of the things that we do during the filing period, is that when a candidate files, we have the ability to put a statement of sorts on the website, and that automatically goes to the state website, and they can look at all of the candidates there, whether or not they have a statement to say or not.
Very interesting. How's the party going to proceed with this? I mean, the state chair wrote an editorial about this not too long ago.
Right. Well, you know, I mentioned that editorial earlier, and how this mail-in vote has been used as a tool by both parties. But in that same editorial, you know, the Chairman Wright stated that, you know, if the Republicans just went out and did this heavily, or the Democrats, we're going to further disenfranchise voters who were maybe already upset with the system as it is. And his goal as chairman is not just to increase it for Republicans, but he would like to see the state do this on a state level, so that all parties, voter participation as a whole, can come up. Because our goal is ultimately to get participation and not to disenfranchise anybody. And you know, by trying to take it one party or the other, that's what you're going to end up doing. You know, whether you're Democrat, Republican, let's get everybody that we can to vote.
It's not just a matter of disenfranchisement, though. I think that there's an educational component that could be involved in this too. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, we want to see voter turnout, participation, but we want them educated. We want people involved in the whole process, from the time that they consider being a candidate to the time that they are in office. They can participate in this process. And so that's what I hope to see come out of it, is that we have an educated voter base. It's good for everybody that way.
So I guess, Tom, the question is, why do people fear this mail-in ballot?
You know, as humans, I think we're creatures of habit. And any time there's a drastic change, I think that we automatically put our defenses up, you know, get bristled up, and we're worried about the unknown. And I think, you know, this has been done in other states with great success. And I hope that, you know, as a county, we'll be able to see that same success, and that as people see the process play out, you know, it's my hope that they're going to become comfortable with it, and they'll actually see it as a positive, and we'll see the same positive results they've seen in other parts of the country that are doing the same thing.
Well, it's very interesting that we have come full circle on this, where we're actually technologically going away from an electronic voting machine back to a paper ballot that's handled by the mail. So as you step backwards in technology, with the new technology of information around us, the combination of them puts us in a position to make very good decisions on the elections in the future. Folks, thanks for joining us for this. extended conversation. We look for you next week on the county seat. We'll see you later.